Good morning, all, or actually, happy lunchtime for my friends in Southbounds and others living here with me in the future. And welcome to Kal-bardr's Corner for this episode of Coffee with Cal. I am Lord Kal-bardr Gellir, Pantheon Meridian Cross, Pantheon Argent Comet, Pantheon Compostela, and Reaper, coming to you live from the Shire of Vulpine Reach in the foothills of Appalachia, here in the northern reaches of Meridians. Yes, I'm on the North Coast today, and it's weird for me. North Coast, border. I don't know. I'm up north, and I don't like it. Now, for this episode, I am joined by a local resident here from Vulpine Reach. You guys may know her from, Kal-bardr's Corner. Often behind the scenes, the social media manager, Lady Rúnfríðr. Good morning, Ish, Runa.
Good morning, Cal.
How are you, my dear?
I feel fabulous. I'm on my third cup of coffee, and life couldn't be better.
Right. I'm up earlier than I usually am, so this is cut number 3 for me. Usually I'm only like 2, maybe 2.5 by now, but I'm juvenated. So all right, so since you've actually never, you've been on camera once for a gaming episode, but we didn't really do introductions that night. Tell people who you are, where you're from, and why you're amazing.
I am Rúnfríðr daughter. I live here in Vulpine Reach, and I do some things in the SCA. I am a social media officer. I'm a deputy to the Exchequer. I like to make a lot of things. I make largesse. I make scrolls. I make regalia. I'm a doer, and I still don't know what makes me awesome. Frankly, I don't know why people talk to me. I have the social acumen of a cheese sandwich, but people keep showing up to talk to me about stuff. I don't get it. But I'm really glad to be here today to talk about a particular passion of mine. So
we will get into that. The social acumen of a cheese sandwich. I'm offended on your behalf for that statement. We'll get into that later. All right. So, of course, since today's show is coffee-themed, we have to talk about our beans. Today, we are drinking the creamy, buttery caramel from Barney's Coffee and Tea Company. I picked this up from Publix. I was like, I need a coffee for this weekend. And I was like, well, there's a good choice right there. Could never go wrong with caramel. And we're drinking it. So, of course, I am traveling, so I had to leave my my normal Feed the Ravens mug at the house. I don't want to break it because it's fragile and pretty. But I asked Runa before we started. I was like, "Hey, are any special stories about these coffee cups?" She's like, "No. My aunt gave them to me. They came from Cracker Barrel, so apparently it's a set from the Cracker Barrel because that's Southern AF right there."
It really is, and it came with a matching set of 4 plates that are in little metal holders that you hang on the wall, which is a Southern trait I picked up from my grandmother.
I'm gonna say, if you for those who are outside of Meridians watching this, that's a thing we do here. We put plates on the wall and decorate. They're usually commemorative, and halftime they're Dale Earnhardt. It's a thing.
Listen, you can tell a lot about a person by the plates hanging on their grandmother's living room wall. Dale Earnhardt or Star Trek. That'll tell you a lot.
It's true. It's true. I actually just bought my buddy. I found some Star Trek plates at the flea market. He's a huge Star Trek fan. And I found some. I was like, I've got to get these for Walter. He needs these plates, man. So there you go. All right. So enough chit chat, enough silliness from us. Let's get into today's topic. So this is one that it doesn't affect me directly, but it affects me indirectly. It affects you, and it's something that I didn't realize was as big of a problem until I was dealing with it with my wife and with you and with Kisa. That invisible disabilities, right? We understand things that are, and realistically, a lot of what we're talking about today. Some you and I sort of debriefed about this a little bit. A lot of these things apply to disabilities in general in the SCA.
Sure.
A lot of the same stuff we can look at is applied to that. So I guess tell us a little bit about, for you, why this topic's important and what you want to sort of cover today.
Okay. Well, invisible disabilities are important to me on a really personal level. Growing up, one of my parents is blind but never used a cane. And so I grew up seeing a person struggling with this disability who did not want to show it to the world. I also have, since childhood, been living with ADHD and with social anxiety and depression. and I have fibromyalgia, so I have chronic pain, chronic fatigue. I also have arthritis. So there's a lot of sort of layers to what I personally am dealing with. And what I found in the community of people who have one or more of these invisible disabilities is that a lot of us we're just trying to live our best life. And there are some things that can make it easier for us and some things that make it actually much harder for us to participate fully in the real world and in our hobby. So I wanted to today talk about kind of the realities of living in a body that won't do all the things you want it to do, and of needing to sort of hack your experience, and how people, especially event stewards, but really anyone, can do some rather simple things to make life and SCA more accessible to people like me. Because it's not that what makes it invisible is that you don't always know. You might know someone for years without knowing that they are suffering in incredible pain, or the reason they disappear at 2:00 at every event is because they need to go take a nap, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the reason they only go to events, tournaments that are outdoors, and they never go to indoor events is because they become overstimulated and they can't handle the noise. You don't know because we don't talk about it. It makes a lot of us feel really self-conscious. And how do you bring that up anyway? So it's something that really impacts my life. It's impacted my life since childhood. And I just want other people to be aware that there are lots of people around them, their friends, people they consider their extended family, who are going through this.
Right. So I know we listed some of the things in the description below, but there's a lot of things we really need to cover in this that we're not going to get to. There's things that you and I aren't dealing with. We don't deal with as much of the neurodivergence or any of the autism spectrum or ADHD or that stuff as much, right? And that's a whole bucket in itself. There's the physical pains, there's mental disorders, there's social anxieties, there's a large category of things you have to look at in this. I know for me personally, the ones we deal with the most. My wife has fibromyalgia, you have fibromyalgia, things that I'm very familiar with, and it drastically affects what events we can go to, or rather how we go to them. Also, I'm hearing a bit of a feedback. I'm going to apologize, folks out there watching. Rune and I are currently in the same building. I'm literally like 15 feet from her currently, so we may be catching some feedback. Just apologies on that. But it's a thing. So when I'm looking at what events we're going to go to as a family, or that we can or can't go to, I have to consider what things do I need to bring. It's not like I can just, if I'm just going to event, I can throw my bag in the Prius and go. And I can fall down wherever. I can sleep in the car. It's cool. But I can't do that with both my girls, or if Runa's going with me, because they have a lot more needs of even just a bed. Like considering just the bed, it's thing to think about.
For example, one of the criteria I have for choosing events is that I need a bed to sleep in. There are a lot of people, and especially post-pandemic, there's been a lot of discussion about how so many of our event sites closed during the plague year. They're just not available to us, or they've changed so much because of 2020 that they are no longer functioning for us in the way that they did before. So for me personally, one of the things that I look for is access to a bed, because I cannot sleep on the ground and then walk the next day. I simply can't do it. Not only that, but even if I weren't going to spend the night, I personally cannot walk around, do service, or even sit under a pavilion and talk to my friends for the full length of a day. I need time, usually from about 2 to 3, maybe 2 to 4, to retire, so that I can be an interesting, effervescent conversationalist, so that I don't get a headache and become so fatigued that I am, just sort of sitting in the corner grumping.
Which is me before coffee, by the way. That's me in the mornings.
I know my own limitations, and even if I am only day tripping the event, I will go ahead and book a bed at an event site so that I have somewhere to retire in the afternoon.
Right.
Day tripping is another big issue. For me, it is physically exhausting to drive. If I have to drive more than 2 hours to a site, I can't drive home at night.
Which let's be honest, anything in Meridians is more than 2 hours for literally anybody.
Yeah, I can get to Ezra and I can get to Owl's Nest.
Right.
But really, they have at most 3 events a year, I think. So it's a really limited menu of things that I physically can day trip. And I don't travel with other people most of the time. My spouse doesn't SCA. He is very supportive of me. So if I go ahead and I pack all the things that I need, he'll help me put it into the car the day before. But as far as going to an event site with me, having someone who is already promised to help me set up a camp, a pavilion, anything like that, that doesn't exist for me. I either have to only take things that I can carry 100 yards by myself, or I have to be willing to reach out to someone prior to the event and ask for a commitment to help me do that. And I am so bad at asking for help. I am the absolute worst. I hate to do it. I don't want to be a burden to people. I want to be the helper. And it's hard to do.
It is, and it's something that it's funny. You say that, and I know there were probably 15 people watching right now. And went, well, hell, if she just asked me, I'd help her, because that's the SCA. The SCA is a very helpful organization in general, and you're right. There are 1,000 people that'll help. If you needed it, if you asked. But then there's the social anxiety of asking in the first place and not wanting to be a burden. That's a whole separate, disorder problem in itself.
And in addition, because I don't expect people to know why I can't do something, whenever I do ask for help, if I don't know the person that I'm asking for help, I don't know why they might not be able to help me, and they don't want to tell me that.
Right.
I'm very empathetic to that if I simply ask the next person coming down the lane, they might also have a bum knee or whatever the thing is.
Right.
So I don't want to ask people who will feel obliged, but really will also be suffering. That bothers me.
Right. So there is on that note, something that here in Meridians that people may not know about, and I think is a really interesting idea that I saw. I haven't really got to do a whole lot with it because of pandemic stuff since we've been back, because we've only got to play about 6 months after returning before the pandemic hit. But Meridians has a group called the Meridians Wooden Spoon Group, which if nobody's ever familiar with the idea of the spoon theory, it's you only have so many spoons in a day or so many spell slots if you're a D&D nerd to do stuff. So for them, the Meridians Wooden Spoon Group is people who have disabilities, both invisible and visible, and one, it's a support group for them, but also for those of us who are more able-bodied, have joined to help with things like that. So I know there was an idea before about going to events of, hey, I need help setting up this pavilion, and it's something you can do ahead of time to then have commitments for that event. I'm going to X event on X days, and you put it out there and then let people come to you with it. And that sometimes I think that, at least from my side, is really cool, because then I can sort of ahead of time help people get over that initial anxiety of can I go to this event? Am I going to have help on the other end or not? And I can sort of plan my day out of, okay, I know I'm going to show up and get my stuff done and this, and this, and then I'm going to go help this person and this person do these things, right? I can sort of plan out what I need to do when I need to get there. So I think that's an interesting idea, and something that I would encourage other kingdoms, other groups to do. Maybe something similar to that. So yeah. So we had a couple of comments come in that I threw up on the screen there, and I'll throw up this one too. That recovery is another thing. 2 weeks to recover from just a day event. That's for me. That's crazy. I go home, throw the stuff in the back in the garage, and I'm back to work Monday morning, no problems. And so when I realized that that's a thing, and I was like, oh, people actually have to deal with that. All right, cool. This is not like they can't just go to the postmortem afterwards because they're literally dead.
Yes. Yes. The first foxes that I stewarded, we had the event Friday and Saturday, cleaned up on Sunday. And of course, we had the debrief on Monday after the event. And I could hardly walk. I had to be driven, and I could hardly walk. And everything hurts, and people want you to answer their very important and valid event-related questions because you were the steward and you should know. But when you're that tired, and sometimes it's not even event-related. Sometimes just in my own work as a data specialist, I do mostly data entry, and sometimes there's fun math stuff to go with it.
Spreadsheets.
I love spreadsheets. But even that job, sometimes I find I need a break from because I've become so tired I cannot read. Right. I'm a former librarian. I have an English degree. There is nothing wrong with my ability to read, but my cognitive function slows down. So I'm trying to be a good steward, but because I haven't had enough time to recover, I can't answer questions effectively, and it's really terrifying. Right. So one of the things that we've done is we now no longer have our post-mortem the Monday after the event. We now wait a full week. And that is to the credit of my seneschal. She's amazing. So,
which is probably honestly speaking as a project manager, probably not a bad idea anyways, because you have time to go home and debrief yourself and sort of process through it and then come back and have the sort of educated conversations. That's probably not a bad idea just from an event planning perspective.
No, and last year I was able to use that week to survey attendees and get feedback from attendees directly. So that I could take that to my shire and let them know what our attendees thought was really successful, and that made me feel good.
There you go. So yeah, so there's a little thing. So it's interesting that what was essentially an accommodation actually ended up benefiting more than just being accommodating. It allowed you more time to be able to be more productive in that accommodations because you are good at your job if given the time to do your job correctly. So that's interesting.
Yes, that is correct.
So, one of the things for me that looking at invisible disabilities, and this is the thing that I'm sure it's why we're supposed to be looking at invisible disabilities because none of us are physically handicapped. So we are none of us are obviously physically handicapped, right? So that invisible disability is the biggest thing because I've watched you and Sifa and Kisa and other people who have fiber and other things functioning and just doing stuff and there's nothing wrong and just do. And then you hit the tent and it's crash.
Yes.
I've watched that and I'm like, oh, there's a difference. And I see the backside of that. And others who have significant others who want to do it see the backside of that and see the recovery on Monday. But at the event, you wouldn't know the difference. And it's hard for when somebody who has an invisible disability, whether it's physical or a social disorder or whatever, has to ask for an accommodation when there's no proof. Right? It's super easy with somebody in a wheelchair to say, hey, I need a ramp because I'm in a wheelchair.
Yes.
Obvious, point A to point B, cool, there's no discussion at that point. And they're like, oh, yeah, you're right, you need a ramp, cool. Hi, I'm a little slow to I'll be sore Monday if I don't have a ramp. That's a whole different discussion. It looks different on in the thing. So I guess talk some about maybe some of your past events that you've dealt with where you had to deal with those things and have those conversations.
Yes. So, for example, one of the things that I wanted to do when I came back to the SCA was I wanted to try field heraldry. I wanted to help with tournaments. I love the process of managing the list because note cards and paperwork, and I love that, systems. But I was running cards for a tournament, a really big one, and I was doing a good job until I was doing a good job. About 45 minutes in, I just hit the wall. They took their first break between rounds to reset. I sat down and I could not stand up again. My legs just felt like jello. My knees were like rubber bands. And it was not going to happen no matter how much I wanted to help. And, you know, a half hour ago, I looked like a productive adult. And now I don't. I look the same on the outside, but I cannot help. One of the things that makes me most self-conscious is that I also am a very fat person. And I don't. Sometimes I get the impression that people think that I am tired because I'm fat, or that I'm in pain because I'm fat. I don't know. I know that when I weighed 100 pounds more than I do now, that I was more tired and in more pain.
Right.
However, I could eventually reach my goal weight of 130 pounds, but I will still live with chronic fatigue and chronic pain, and I will still live with ADD, and I will still live with social anxiety. Those things won't go away. And sort of the emotional need to be seen as a healthy person is hard. It's hard. It's hard because, you know, like, I know that the world perceives me as a reasonably healthy person, and they won't know the difference unless I tell them. And I don't know if I'll be rejected if I tell them.
Right. So this is a good comment here. Many people don't really know or believe these issues exist because most people have become so good at hiding it. I think that's the thing. And then Fury comments that we're the best actors.
Yes, there's a really common phrase that's almost cliche at this point. I'm not pretending to be sick. I'm pretending to be well.
Right.
I went to one event that the accommodation was very interesting. I signed up for a bed, like I do, and I told them that I had a handicap, that specifically I had limited mobility, and that I could not climb more than 6 stairs. So the event stewards graciously put me in the cabin that was set aside for people with disabilities, because it had a 0-stair entry. It had plugs for everybody's CPAPs and things. It had a cooler, like a mini fridge for medications. However, it was the cabin farthest from the list and the hall.
Right.
So here I am trying to decide, what do I leave here and what do I take to the field with me today? If I carry my chair, I can't carry my project I was going to work on. If I carry both those things, I could leave my lunch here, but I have to come back here for lunch. And that means I have to make 2 extra trips later in the day.
Right.
So just thinking about how many times I'm going to walk the 1/4 mile, which is not a huge distance. How many times am I going to walk the 1/4 mile from my bed to the field? Becomes an intellectual burden, frankly, that most people wouldn't have to think about.
Right. Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm like, that's, to me, it's like, oh, whatever, I'll just go ahead and grab it. It's not a huge deal, but it's, again.
Well, I'll just make another trip. It's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. It'll take me 20 minutes. It's fine.
Right.
Yeah. No.
So I know here in Meridians, so I want to shift topics a little bit, talking to some of the neurodivergent bits, right? Because I know something come here in Meridians a lot as event stewards. You and I have talked about this some, and we've seen it. There's a lot to consider on that as well. Again, it's an invisible disability. There are sometimes visible manifestations of it, whether it's a panic attack or or obvious. I'm not gonna say headaches are obvious, but I have very visible headaches. So like I've seen headaches before, so I can look, go, yeah, you've got a headache. But it's not as, again, you're looking at somebody who was completely functional 5 minutes ago because they were effectively acting, and then are now falling apart and crying. Like it's a fine line, but it does trigger. So that's something we've done here in Meridians that I've seen is starting to look at things we can do to help with that, either by setting aside, areas or cabins or whatever. I know, was it Midwinter or maybe Magnifair, that they actually had a room in the building that was a quiet room, like this is a quiet space you can go to if you need to for whatever you needed. Which was good for that. There were some kids that needed it. There was some moms that were with new babies that needed it. There was some, it was a useful thing. So I think starting to have those conversations is useful as well, because there's so much those people need that, like, how do you, and it's a lot to deal with, right? It's a lot to look at. But having these conversations helps with that. At least it gives options to start having the what can we do better?
Right. Magnifair is a touchy subject for me personally, not because the event is bad, but because 3 years ago I went to the site where they were having it, and I think they still have it there. It's lovely. They have hotel rooms attached. It's 2 floors. There might be an elevator. There's an elevator to use if you need to. It's a lovely site, but there are no hallways. It's kind of that open floor plan concept, so that all the rooms are attached to each other. Ergo, every room becomes a hallway. And people rather cram into the common rooms and want to socialize. Then there's music, and there's children, and there's everybody's bags and chairs sitting around. There's a lot of sound, undirected sound waves in those rooms.
It's also very, the ceilings are relatively low too.
Yes. And so 3 years ago at that event, I had a panic attack. I had done everything I could to prepare for the day. I was in a great mood when I arrived. I wasn't in pain that day. But because of the physical environment, I wasn't able to regulate my anxiety because I was spending my energy to regulate my physical discomfort. And that's a choice that we made. So like you said, any event that can set aside a quiet room, that is a huge bonus for, like you said, for new moms, and not just people who consider themselves as having like a disability, but also people who just get tired because they drove a long way that day. Remembering that invisible disabilities, it's not always that chronic pain and fatigue. It can also be conditions like anxiety, like depression, like a panic disorder, PTSD, ASD, ADHD, people who have ADHD becoming overstimulated and then getting very angry or very irritated by some small thing that wouldn't normally irritate us. But now, because we've used our energy to manage our physical discomfort because of the amount of stimulation in a space, now we're not acting really like ourselves. It's very embarrassing for me personally. I don't like it.
Well, it's something that's something even I personally deal with when I hit that overstimulation, because when I go to events, I'm not gonna say I turn on, but there's a very obvious. Anybody who's ever dealt with me personally, one-on-one or one of those small groups, I'm a different person than when I'm on stage at an event or on camera. I'm much more magnanimous, much more open, much more loud. So that at the end of the day, I crash. Like, I come down off of that and I go to a quiet. Depending on the event, like Magnifair is a great example of this, that if that overstimulation occurs earlier, I will get snappier, and or if I don't eat or I don't whatever, like that, there is a change in attitude. So I've seen it in me, so I understand it better in others, and I can it's something I pick up on. Just watching the crowd, you can sort of see where pockets of people are that are starting to experience that stimulation. So, nope, had a thought, lost it, went away.
So one of the things I wanted to talk about today are some of the hacks that I use to make my event experience better, and I would love to hear from our audience also some of the things they do to offer themselves accommodations to make their eventing more pleasant.
Right.
So one of the things that I do is I don't have a period chair. It would be lovely, but I can't carry it.
Right.
I can carry maybe a 3-pound chair. So I have a wooden folding chair. Is it the most comfortable chair in the world? No, but I can carry it. Okay. Likewise with baskets and luggage and that sort of thing. I and several of my friends, we have a habit of packing 10 small baskets rather than 2 big baskets. There's a basket for every project because I can't carry a 20-pound thing 100 yards 4 times today, but I can carry this 3 to 6 pound thing 100 yards 4 times today. So that's all.
I just heard Amber from Mobile go, yeah, that. I heard it because she's a fan of the tiny baskets. So I heard it. Sifa, you've been heard, my dear.
If the basket is wider than me, we're not doing it. I can't. No. Like I said, one of the things that I do is I always reserve a bed space, whether I think I'm going to use, whether I plan to stay the night or not, so that I have a place to retire. I pre-pack my bedroll. This is one of the things that my lovely husband does for me, is he helps me put all of the things I need to make a bed soft and usable together. We roll it up together. And then we knot it off with my protege belt. That way I never leave home without a bed to sleep in and the proper belt. So I can just unroll and tuck the corners and I'm ready to go to bed. I can rest immediately after unpacking my bedroll if I need to. Yeah.
Something you said about that too the other day that I thought I found interesting is you tie it with your protege belt. So one, you have it with you, but also so that it was a reminder to you to, like, you undo that and you fix yourself before you then put the belt on, so that you're established before you go do service. I thought that was a really cool sort of a thought pattern behind that.
Absolutely. Self-care is not always sexy.
Sure.
And it's certainly not doing what you want to do. Self-care for me looks like putting myself first, even when that's uncomfortable. And it's something I've had to teach myself.
Right. So let's see, we had a tip come in from Furia. So using disposable bamboo feast gear because you can't clean your feast gear.
That's a wonderful idea. And then you don't have to carry 10 pounds worth of plates.
Right. So also they'd be light. True. That's true. That's a good one to go in. Let's see. So Elfric says, so he's actually has the opposite problem of you do, making the 1 or 2 trips back and forth. So he's going to carry all of it in 1 or 2 trips. So larger baskets are better. So I think that's an accommodation. Figure out what works best for you and make that work. It's all about packing it better.
Absolutely.
Let's see. Handicaps aren't seen as handicaps, but being weird. Expect to act normal by pure effort of will. And again, so I think that's another idea of the invisible disabilities. It's just, you're just being weird or you're just being lazy. Somebody mentioned being lazy earlier. That's what it's often seen as. Any of the ones that are either the neurodivergence or being weird, the physical divergence or being lazy. That's the 2 trigger words that I've heard for those things. yeah, it's weird. It's a weird thing. It's weird. It is divergent from the norm, but it's there now, and we have to remember that.
Right. And Will, I don't know you personally, but I'm going to let you know right now that there is a huge spectrum of things that can be considered normal.
Right.
And if you haven't found your people yet, just keep looking.
Yeah.
Just wait. Eventually, those people will find you. I have a friend. We were friends in high school and in college, and we dated for years. And he's a lovely human being who did not find out that he is, in fact, on the autism spectrum until he was having his own children tested 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, was he kind of a weird dude? Yeah, but he was a fantastic dude and really good at what he does. So that's okay. I said earlier in the episode that I have the social acumen of a cheese sandwich, and the truth is, I don't know why people talk to me. I don't understand it. I play conversations in my head the way I want them to go, and they never do. I have a hard time holding on to multiple aspects of conversations, especially if more than one decision gets made in a given conversation. It's hard for me to remember multiple points because they're not written down. Sometimes if the conversation is particularly weighty or emotional, what I remember from the experience is how it felt. Right. And not the content of the conversation at all. And people think that I wasn't listening to them or that I don't care about them and I don't care to remember things. That's not the truth at all. The truth is that my brain simply doesn't work that way. And I don't know, like, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm just doing it differently. And I have to ask my friends for a lot of help in the remembering stuff department. But I like to think I bring other things to the table. I make a really mean chicken salad. And I'm a pretty
your spreadsheets are fabulous.
My spreadsheets are amazing, and nobody cheerleads with less enthusiasm than me. So, yay!
I think one of the things that's important in the SCA and that we can do. So we talked about self-care. You mentioned self-care, and I think that's a key, right? So anybody if you have a physical disability, an invisible disability, a neuro disability, a neurodivergence, wherever you are in that spectrum of things, make sure you're focusing on self-care. So there was a comment here. While it can make us seem self-centered, we must take care of ourselves or we won't be able to help others. I think that's the important thing, especially you and I speaking as proteges, right? That's people that are on the Pelican path, on that service path. It is very easy to forget to do self-care and to make sure we're functional first. And it's even me speaking as a completely able-bodied person, or a mostly able-bodied person. I forget to eat. I forget to take care of myself. I forget to do things I need to do because I'm too busy doing the stuff. Doing my job, doing the things I want to do, the things that need to get done. And if I'm forgetting to do that, I know others are. I know that's happening for those who aren't capable. Because I can run to the car 30 times and get the things I need out. Not everybody can. So if I forget the thing because I'm exasperated, I'll just go back and get it. You don't have that option, for instance.
One of my favorite jobs at events is to make breakfast because I know I'll be able to do it.
Because it's early in the day.
It's the first thing of the day. I can definitely finish that job. Also, I know how to use a commercial coffee pot. So that's a very special skill set that not everyone.
Speaking as someone with a culinary background, you're absolutely correct. That is a required skill.
I have been to 5 events. Obviously not in 2020, but in my first 2 years back, I went to 5 events, and I was the only person who could use the coffee pot, and I just thought that was hilarious. But I was glad that I got up to make breakfast. At one event, I got up to make breakfast. So I was up and in the kitchen at 5 o'clock in the morning, making coffee and eggs and toast and all the things, right? And then that night at dinner time, following feast, because I'm Southern and there is no party without food. So after feast, someone made the announcement that the kitchen staff is washing their own dishes. Why are their proteges sitting down in the hall? You should be washing dishes. And I broke down in tears. I'd been awake since 5 o'clock in the morning. And even though I had taken my hour of retirement in the cabin, I wasn't able to sleep, and I certainly wasn't rested. And I was sitting there at the dinner table in my yellow belt thinking, I can't. I have enough energy left to walk back to my bed.
Right.
When I get up from this table, I am going to bed. And I felt so ashamed.
Let's talk about that for a second, because I'm going to put on my pet peeve hat and get out the soapbox for a second. I'm speaking to the peers of the realm and the royalty that do this shit and the autocrats that do it too. Don't. Just because there's a red belt or a yellow belt on that person, and I'm speaking to those two because for some reason apprentices don't get this crap as much. And if you're an apprentice out there that does, my apologies, I've never seen it. I've seen the proteges and the squires get it. Just because you're wearing a belt doesn't mean they're your work crew. We put on those belts because we want to serve and we want to do stuff. But that belt is a symbol of our association with our peer and not you. Okay. All right. It bugs me because I've seen that guilt trip thrown on squires day in and day out. Well, the squire should be in there washing dishes. The squire should be out here helping. The squire should be doing this. Or the protege should be here. No, they shouldn't. They're doing the jobs they can do when they can. Do not shame. Do not guilt. Now, if you expect to come wash dishes because you don't want the kitchen staff doing it, that's perfectly valid. Walk out and ask the hall, hey guys, who can come wash dishes? The kitchen staff needs to take a break. And I guarantee you, I will be the first one in that kitchen when you say it that way. But if you walk out and demand the proteges come wash dishes, I will be the last one in that kitchen. You will not see me in there, just to be clear. All right.
You and I see our yellow belts slightly differently. In my lineage, the belt is not a belt. The belt is a flag.
Which is the intention of the yellow belt in Maria. Specifically, that's why the belt is yellow. If anybody's ever heard the story from Master Cathal, the reason the belts are yellow is so they can find the proteges to have them ask them to do things. But it's neither here nor there. Please continue.
And I did take up the belt because I want to be helpful. I just hope that people will understand when I say I cannot. I want to, and I can't. And I need you to accept that.
The point is you shouldn't be shamed for that. I think that is really the point I'm making is if they're shaming you because you're wearing that belt, it should not come with the shame.
Yeah.
I agree with that. It should be a voluntary service, not a shamed service.
I agree with that statement.
Let's see. So Fury says they have the shirtless dish crew. After most feasts, the knights clean all the dishes at the end of the day. That's cool. That's something that I would like to see. I know His Excellency Sebastianos did that at Blood and Roses last year, or last year for the pandemic. At end of the day, the autocrat came out and said, "Hey, the kitchen staff's going to take a break. Can somebody wash dishes?" And at the time, he was sitting on the throne. Was the first one standing, and when the king heads to the kitchen, you better be following him. That's so I said, okay, I'm up. So I went and followed him. And that was cool because that was the man who is supposed to be the epitome of royalty and the head of this organization. That at least from the game side of this was in there washing dishes.
Where there is a spoken word piece that talks about this. It's where oh where a meridian crown. And it talks about how I went to the list field to find the king. I didn't find anyone. I didn't find the king there, but I found someone teaching fighters. And I went to the hall and I didn't find the king there, but I found someone learning in class. And I went into the kitchen and I didn't find the king, but I found someone washing dishes. And I went to the throne and I didn't find the king there. The king was participating in the event all day. And it's a beautiful spoken word thing, and I love it to death. Master Raven put in the comments that he has a foldable wagon.
Yep.
I got one of these last year during the pandemic, so I haven't had a chance to use it, but one time. Oh my gosh.
Yep.
I can take all of my field side things in one trip. I love it. It's got these massive wheels on it and a little table I can set my drink on. Oh, I'm never going back. Maybe I'll make a cover for it and like make it look like the Bayou Tapestry or something. I don't know. Just to make my 4-wheeled wagon blend in a little bit better, but I'll never go back. I'm using that collapsible wagon till it falls apart. Absolutely.
Right. Yeah, and you can get those relatively inexpensively. I've seen them in Academy for $40, $50, which I mean, I get maybe a lot for some people, but if you save up for it, it's a good thing if you can fit it. I know, and that's so. You have to look at things like that of can you fit it in your car. I know that's something we've considered here recently. So the wife and girlfriend and I recently bought a trailer because we realized that there was no way we could go to an event with all three of us, all of our stuff in my Prius. Doesn't work. And so part of our accommodations for us was we had to purchase a trailer. And now I have to purchase a truck to pull that trailer because, by the way, it won't get pulled with my Prius. It just doesn't have enough horses. I need more ponies, man. So you find those things. You find those ways, around your disabilities. And that's what we've had to do. It's what I've had to make sure that I've made sure they could participate to do that. So I know one thing you want to talk about. We're actually running short on time, and I'm running short on coffee. So the problem with using smaller cups is I have less coffee to drink, and I'm sad about it. So we talked a lot about what we as individuals can do and what we as individuals can do for ourselves and sort of for others. I mentioned the Meridians Wooden Spoon group. If you're not here, if you're here, Meridians, look up Meridians Wooden Spoon on Facebook. Join that group. If you're either an able-bodied person who wants to help or somebody with some sort of disability who needs help, please join that group. It's an amazing support place, and it's an amazing place for people like me to help you. But if you're not in this kingdom, feel free to start one in your own kingdom. Reach out to that group to help sort of figure out how they do it. But let's talk about sort of the event organization. We mentioned having a safe space, having a set-aside space for neurodivergent and new moms, things like that, a quiet space. But there's a lot more we as event stewards can do to help accessibility, right? And so this runs the gamut of both visible and invisible disabilities. I know you sent me a link, and I'll share that into the thing. Something the East Kingdom does really well. If you want to talk about that.
Mm-hmm. So the East Kingdom has an Office of the Accessibility Porter. And I think this is a brilliant idea. And it's this person's job to help educate, essentially, event stewards, and to also advocate for people who have disabilities and may not feel like they can advocate for themselves. My favorite thing on their whole website is this event stewards checklist. And it's not a whole lot of stuff. If I were to print it out, it would be maybe 1.5 pages. But it is a checklist of things that the event steward can look for at their site. Now, I am not an unreasonable person. I know for a fact that the sites that we use in Meridians, none of them have all of these things, and probably not in the East either.
I should say, honestly, probably not even half of them. For some of the sites we use to be checked.
Right. However, if I, as a person with limited mobility, in particular, but also a person who has some neurodivergence, can go, and if I can find on your event site this checklist and see what is and is not true about your site, that helps me make informed decisions about what events I'm going to go to. Sure. Yes, the more information I have about the event site, the better I can plan it. So even if I decide to go, knowing, for example, there are some people, not I myself, but there are people who have limited mobility and they use a wheelchair or a mobility device. They don't have to use it every minute of every day, but they do use it consistently because it makes their life more full. If I know that I will have to move down unpaved paths, and if I know that the doorways are not wide enough to accommodate my chair, I know that I can't go to that site.
Right.
But if I know that the pathways are paved and I know that the doorways are ADA compliant, then I can take my chair and plan to use it. And then I have to think about the other things I need to go with that.
Right.
Just like earlier, we were talking about pulling a wagon. I'm going to go to Gadelop for the first time this fall. I have a sneaking suspicion that my little pull-behind wagon is not going to fare well on the beach.
Yeah, there are definitely spots of sand there you have to deal with. That's true.
So I have to plan around that expectation. So if there are, if we could develop the habit, and I say this myself, I consider myself an event steward, and that's one of my primary areas of service. I love to do it. But if we could develop the habit of publishing something like this accessibility checklist on our website, whether it makes the site look fantastic or not, letting people make informed decisions is really the most powerful thing an event steward can do.
Right. Yeah, and we've talked in here actually on Kal-bardr's Corner. We've talked about accessibility in multiple forms. We've talked about, I had sign heralds or sign interpreters for some of the shows we've done per request. We try to do captioning stuff. And there's things like this. We start going back to physical events that our event sites are primitive. But by the nature of the things we do, we lean towards primitive sites for a lot of events because it's more medieval. Those primitive sites then aren't as accommodating because they're out in the middle of the woods, right? So it's harder. And yeah, I think one of the complaints that I've seen from people who are not necessarily as willing to be inclusive, and I'm not all good at that, is that it's making it harder. It makes events harder. We can't use certain sites because it doesn't have X, Y, and Z. Well, no. None of us are saying we can't use certain sites or we need to stop using certain sites. Maybe we should. Maybe that's a discussion we should have, and maybe we should find better sites. But also, we all recognize that we're limited on sites, especially now. But just having this checklist or having information out, and including things like on top of that list, hotels nearby. Looking at the area that the site is in. When I was talking to Sammy in the racial relations episode, I never considered looking at the area around the city because I'm a 6'3" white dude. I'm not scared of anywhere I go. But females traveling by themselves or people of color traveling by themselves, that's a thing to consider as well. It also falls in this accessibility spectrum. So we really need to start looking at the sites better and just getting the information out there so people can see it. That's really the important part. This checklist is great. I'm personally, I'll say this, and no offense to East Kingdom, I'm not a fan of the way it looks, but that's the tech in me wants to do it better. But the information's there, right? So if it's there, it's there. And it's important for it. I'm sitting here looking, I'm like, I can't read this really well, but it works. But there's some really things I hadn't thought about, like refrigeration. Again, I don't think about refrigeration. I think about it for I need a cooler for my stuff, but
insulin is so
insulin's
important. It's so important. So one of the things that I did, one of the things that I want to do as we start planning in-person events again is on the website, make this kind of list accessible, but also take pictures of key areas so that a person can say, okay, when I go into the hall, this is the kind of table that's there. You would be amazed how many people can't sit at a picnic table with an attached seat. And when I go into the bathroom, this is what the bathrooms will look like. Let me make a decision about that. This is how far it is from, if I can put in a picture how far it is from the hall to the list field, that's important to know. Or from the list field to the closest bathroom, et cetera, et cetera. If there's a steep hill that I would need to climb, it's good to include pictures of the site so that people can decide what tools am I going to need to make this trip possible.
Honestly, that helps for planning, just even from regular perspective, like if I can see what ground I'm going to be dealing with, I know what stakes I need to bring. For my tent, like, and that has nothing to do with accessibility, but it's a thing I would want to know just from a functional perspective.
Absolutely.
The sand stakes versus the hard ground stakes are two very different sets of materials that I shouldn't have to tote all of it.
I was a middle school teacher for 9 years, and one of the things that rings most true, and that I can take away from that experience, and say is honestly, like, a universal truth, is that any accommodation that you make for a child with an invisible disability, especially something like ADHD, any accommodation that you make for that one child in your class will wind up being useful to almost every child in your class. So posting written instructions for things for the kid who needs to go back and check 10 times winds up helping everyone else in the room, and making them all more independent, able to independently help themselves instead of rely on you as the adult. That kind of thing. Anytime we make an accommodation anytime we make sort of a reasonable accommodation for someone who has a physical or other limitation, we're making the whole event, the whole party, the whole dinner more accessible and enjoyable in new ways to everyone.
Right. And something to consider, and this is speaking directly to the event stewards out there, if something happens during your event and you have to make an accommodation on the fly, document it, write it down, send a message to your officer, chat, whatever, write it down. Put it in the site details for that thing for next year, for the next event steward, right? That's something that I think we don't do well in the SCA is we don't pass off information from year to year. There's no like documentation that gets rolled over. I think that's something we maybe want to look at doing better, because that would be super helpful if I knew this person had trouble with these stairs or this area or this spot's gravelly, maybe because I didn't notice it, but you would have. If we document that, then it's something that we know for next year, and we remember when we're actually going to plan this event. Or like we had rum here yesterday here in Meridians, and we had our rum passwords we put on a picture so that it was harder to grab. But it's also then harder to grab for people with screen readers that have vision impairments.
Yes.
I never would have thought about that. It's a picture that should work. Like I know because some screen readers can read them, but I think it was the background they put on it didn't work. We had to fix it last minute and get people out there, and we now know that, right? So when it comes to you with something like that, and I remembered it because Dixie put it in the comments there. I as an event steward, I'm going to take that and go, oh crap, you're absolutely correct. We completely missed that. My bad. And we document it. I'm not offended. I'm not hurt because I messed up or we messed up. Like I feel bad about it. I feel bad that we had to deal with that accommodation, but it's a thing we're not going to learn from it, right? So take those things that you come up and learn from them. I saw a comment from Viking that I wanted to address because I really think it's really cool. He was speaking with Her Highness Thorkatla at Rum yesterday about some of this and about making Meridians more inclusive and turning towards some of this. I'm really happy to hear that they had that conversation because it's something that, especially being in the South, inclusivity is not always our first objective. And it's something that I'm happy that Meridians is really going to be looking at here in the future. So,
it's interesting that you should say that. I can totally understand why people would see the South as maybe not looking to be actively looking to be inclusive. I can understand where that perception would come from. I also want to point out that while the South has a reputation for being back a little bit insular and maybe backward and regressive in some areas, we also have a reputation for being really welcoming hosts.
Right. It's a weird balance.
It's a weird thing. So if we just lean into that concept of showing people courtesy and grace by being the very best hosts we can be, we will wind up we'll make everyone more happy to be at our things. One other really important and easy accommodation that I think would really help people with invisible disabilities, but also just literally everyone, is if you make your schedule published not only on your website and mobile friendly,
Right.
Okay, so mobile friendly on your website, but also printed on a half sheet or a full sheet, available at Troll or around the event.
At Gate, at Newcomers Point, somewhere around there, yeah.
And also in large print format, hung in some key areas, because I'm going to let you know right now that I'm going to be on my phone looking at stuff. I will literally forget what classroom I intended to walk to immediately after looking it up. I'll get halfway down the hallway, especially if it's like a busy hallway and I stop to talk to somebody that I know. I'll get halfway down the hallway and I'll forget that number again. So I'm going to need a piece of paper. I'm going to need a poster. I'm going to need it in my hand. As many ways as we can print the schedule. I can't be the only one. I know I'm not the only one. That would be an accommodation that would be helpful to literally everyone. I feel bad for the trees, but
well, and there's around that too.
I'm not responsible for
big
most
whiteboards
that's happening, but that's another conversation.
That's true. Yeah, I don't think our event calendars are going to kill the rainforest. But honestly, even looking like getting a whiteboard, a large whiteboard to put some stuff on would be an option as well. Because then it's at least reusable. It does require a little more function and have somebody get it there and get it up, but something to consider. So
that's a good idea.
On that note, we are just over an hour, and that's an empty cup. So I want to thank all of you for joining us. We've got hold on, I've got business first. No thank yous yet. Let's do some business. So coming up next on Kal-bardr's Corner, we will be joined once again by Her Highness of Artemisia. That's so much fun to say. For What If We Both Fight? Our next episode of Consort Conversations. We have two amazing knights joining us for that episode. I'm looking forward to hearing that. And as a fighter, I'm looking forward to hearing the fighter side of that conversation that I haven't gotten to hear yet, and seeing where we can do that. Also, if you want to support Kal-bardr's Corner and everything we're doing here on KK Productions, look us up on Patreon, patreon.com/KK Productions, and get your name on the grand wall of patron. Best reverb ever. Also, of course, look us up on Redbubble. There you go. Buy stickers. Search KK Productions on Redbubble. There's stickers and whatnot. Yeah, there you go. Runa's got our pride sticker and my lovely face there. My KK Productions sticker. I'm excited. I love having stickers with my face on them. It was like my crowning achievement to have a sticker with my face on it. So anyways, Runa, I want to thank you for joining me today. Thank you for hosting me for the weekend. I've been happy to have you here. For those watching, we're going to get pedicures later, so I'm excited about that. My very first pedicure. So it'll be a fun day for us. I'm kind of terrified. And of course, thank you to our viewers for watching. Thanks for tuning in every week. We appreciate all the comments, you guys. I love the conversation we get to have with this, and just getting to have people appreciating it's like I don't want to be appreciated necessarily for what I'm doing here, but I appreciate that people are thanking us for having this conversation, because there's so much we're getting through on Kal-bardr's Corner, especially on the coffee shows, that just needs to get talked about. And this is just another one of that giant list of things we as a society need to talk about.
Well, I just hope that all of you, whether you are stewards of events or attendees of events, will simply carry in your heart a desire to make people feel at home and feel welcome, and will ask what you can do to make people feel more comfortable in your presence. That's all.
Yeah. And on that note, we'll close it out. Y'all have a great day, everybody. This has been Runa and Cal in Kal-bardr's Corner. Bye, guys.